Ji, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, and Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'd like to welcome everyone to this exciting fireside chat hosted by Daftarkhwan, although we're not next to a fireside and we're not at Daftarkhwan because of COVID, but we hope the chat will make up for it. So I'd like to welcome. I'm Shehryar Hydri. I'm the managing partner at Deosai Ventures. I'll be your host for the talk today, and I'd like to welcome Sarmad Farooq, the founder and CEO of Truck It In, who's our guest for today's session. A little bit about Daftarkhwan for those of you who are joining their fireside for the first time or have heard the name and haven't visited the place. For the last 4 years, Daftarkhwan has been building a co-working community of entrepreneurs and professionals working on some of the most exciting business ideas in Pakistan. Their community has now grown to hundreds of people across multiple cities. And what they aim to do is empower these founders and these companies to work across the board and grow and scale with the help of Daftarkhwan's network. So as they say, it's not just, it's more than an office space. They're helping to build a very, very useful and supportive community. And I've personally sort of seen them help a lot of startups scale out and actually grow beyond Daftarkhwan and be one of the main startups in Pakistan. So for those of you who haven't visited or haven't engaged with Daftarkhwan before, I would recommend please do become a part of the community. So to kick off the intro with Sarmad, welcome.
Thank you, Shehryar. Thanks for having me here.
Pleasure to have you here. And the intro that I will give is obviously a little biased because Deosai was the first VC to invest in Truck It In outside of their friends and family round. So a little bit of bias there, but obviously that's a positive bias. And the thing I'd like to start with is that usually trucking is a boring subject for most of us. And when we say that, this is an exciting sector, trucking is not the thing that most of us are thinking about. It's usually e-commerce or fintech or something related to AI or blockchain or something like that. But when I say that this is an exciting sector and this is an exciting startup, I'm not just saying that because they're a portfolio company. So the reason for that is the background on not just Truck It In, but the trucking industry and where it stands right now is that what's happening in Pakistan is the startup ecosystem, the funding, the investments, all of that, people hear the news and they see the headlines, but the e-commerce boom and all of that has happened. And now the back end is actually catching up to that whole boom. So when we say that there's an e-commerce boom in Pakistan, there is a much needed vacuum on the supply side and the logistics and the fulfillment and all of that infrastructure that is actually needed for this boom to actually carry on the momentum. And that's the exciting part that a lot of us are seeing now in Pakistan, where not just companies like Truck It In, but other infrastructure, logistics, fulfillment companies are trying to fill that gap. As far as trucking or logistics and the core industry that Truck It In itself is in right now, we feel the sector is exciting because across Pakistan, the network connectivity, the highways, either through our previous plans or because of CPEC, all of those plans are fairly aggressive for the next 5 odd years. And if you look at the next decade in Pakistan, not just transport and logistics within Pakistan, within the country, but as a regional hub, there is tremendous scope and tremendous opening up of connections outside of CPEC as well. So if you're looking at the future planned peace in Afghanistan and the connectivity with Central Asia, if you're looking at train and freight connectivity through Iran to Turkey and Europe, and hopefully within the next 5 to 10 years, we'll also see the borders towards India easing out and not just transit trade going through to Afghanistan, but obviously trade between Pakistan and India. So as a region, this is one of the hottest regions to be in terms of logistics and freight. And if you can somehow crack Pakistan or this regional market, then your access to MENA as well as other regional markets becomes that easier. And it's not just a small market that we're looking at, but Pakistan, by the sheer numbers, where if you look at logistics and freight, it's almost 10% of our GDP. If you're looking at all the supporting industries, and we're larger than a lot of markets in MENA as well. So any company or any startup, that any platform that actually has a foothold in Pakistan, for them to be a regional player becomes that much easier. So that's the background about our excitement for investing, not just in Track It In, but this sector, and why the entire ecosystem is watching this sector very, very closely, with dozens of companies jumping in. And everybody knows it's not a one winner takes all, but there will be 3 or 4 market leaders that will then expand to become sort of regional unicorns that people are waiting for. So that's the backdrop of the sector and the company that we have today. And I'll hand over to Sarmad now to give us a bit of intro about himself, why he got into this, his background at Kareem, and where they stand right now as a company.
Yeah, thank you, Shehryar, for the introduction, for sharing details about the space. So I've done manufacturing engineering from GIKI. So right after my university, I joined university's incubation center, from where I got acquired in Kareem. So I was employee number 1 for Islamabad. So Islamabad later on became the fastest growing city of the entire network. So after ride hailing, I took on the next challenge of food delivery platform, which was Kareem Now. So we predominantly expanded in Saudi Arabia. Then in my last assignment, I was head of commercial for last mile delivery in Saudi, where we scaled operation of Amazon, becoming their fulfillment arm in Saudi. So I've joined Track It In as a full-time co-founder in March, and we closed around just 2 weeks ago. So in terms of like how this idea popped up, or how we got passionate about solving problems for this industry. So I will give a little bit background of my family business as well. So from the last 30, 40 odd years, we are in this trucking business, and I belong from an area which is, from that area, you can see most of the infrastructure assets within this trucking ecosystem, starting from truck ownership to hotel ownership to supply brokerage houses to demand aggregating channels, which we call ADA in our language. So all these infrastructure assets, or majority of the vehicles on the long haul, hail from this region, or the ownership is basically from this region. So because of that, we were like, right from the childhood, I was able to understand the problems that this industry has, and the legacy trucking business that is running on a traditionally ways, and still is running even after like if seeing from the last 25 odd years, is running on the same pattern. So then luckily I got into Kareem, and I was privileged enough to do some experimentation within Kareem, where we learned a lot of things. There was capital there, there was opportunity there. So we were like fresh out of university, worked on my own startup for 1 year. And then you get that specific sense of purpose, and you have that energy within you, and you have people around you who can give you better guidance and direction. So then I luckily got that lab where we done a lot of experimentation, and again, like we were like, we did it massively well, and we succeeded not within Pakistan, also within the region as well. So because of that, at that time, we were thinking like, we're getting ready. So as we were privileged enough, definitely we had that massive responsibility around us as well, because we, from our childhood, we have seen a lot of problems within the supply chain trucking space. And there I met obviously Heather and Raza as well within Kareem, where we worked on few projects. There were few overlaps. So I realized like these are the guys who have similar passion. We have few overlaps in terms of our passion, overall lap in terms of our DNA. So that startup gene within ourselves. So for those reasons, obviously, we know like we definitely can do something for Pakistan. But then we realized once we work together that in terms of the complementing skill set that we have within ourselves, so it ticks the basic or necessary elements of being a co-founder or being a team or getting after the sizable opportunity. So then we started doing our research, obviously we had like, if we get any chance, we can definitely, logistic or trucking is one of the opportunity. But then we did our research, did our homework. What are the sizable opportunity where our skill set would be suitable enough, where we would have that knowledge or strong domain knowledge of the industry, of that traditional industry, where we have that complementing skill set, or where we have built successfully high performance team, where we have that environment where we problem solved a lot of things, brought solutions to a lot of things, and where we created a lot of impact within the lives of the people, not locally but regionally as well. So because of a lot of these things, and then we look at the sheer size that this opportunity offers, like it's 10% of the Pakistan GDP, $24 billion. So we realize like our mission is obviously unlocking $1 billion in resource potential within this supply chain infrastructure of Pakistan. So generally, I think government responsibility is to provide you with that infrastructure, but it's your responsibility as someone who has acquired certain skill, as someone who has that high performance team, or who has access to better talent within Pakistan as well, who has those mentor or guiding principles around himself, people who can guide them. So you have that all like things that adds up to you doing startup here. And obviously we have seen in 2021, we have seen in 2020, Pakistan is like becoming more of an opportunity for a lot of USA and European VCs as well. We have seen Pakistan passing Egypt in terms of the capital raise, then Pakistan obviously raising majority of its capital from outside Pakistan. So a lot of these things are a lot more encouraging for the kind of opportunity that exists in Pakistan. Then a lot of players getting into the Pakistan. That's again a strong validation of the kind of opportunity exists there. So obviously us knowing Pakistani market better, us knowing the truckers better, knowing what they wear, knowing what they speak, knowing what their life is, knowing what's missing in their work-life balance, knowing what's missing in the kind of the way you can institutionalize the trucking space. There's a lot of opportunity exists there. So anybody going with the localized approach, anybody going with understanding those problems way better, anybody solving those problems differently makes a lot of sense. So then obviously I was like blessed enough to get those two co-founders who were complementing enough, and we had the similar vision. So that's how this whole trucking idea came up, and we did our part in terms of Kareem contributing to, in terms of my family background, in terms of Raza, Heather, who are complementing me as a co-founder, complementing this startup as a co-founder. So yeah, so these were the few things. And in terms of where we are at Truck It In, so right now we are working in multiple industries within Pakistan, and we during our research, or because of my traditional knowledge about this industry, I think now we are getting that validation from the market. So every second day we're learning a lot of new things. We're learning like this passion, or this is no more a commercial responsibility. This is way more a responsibility as a Pakistani, as a part of Kareem Mafia, who was blessed enough, who was privileged enough to basically go after this market and make sure like we leave a massive or a decent dent within this market, and we change the lives of the trucker. So yeah, we are very much like evolving as a person, evolving as a co-founder, evolving as a company, and we're definitely now feeling way more responsibility than we were once we started. And I think as we face more challenges, as we understand more problems, we will be feeling way more responsibility, and we're making sure like we definitely create some impact out of our understanding, out of our efforts.
I think that's a very valid point about the responsibility for actually delivering and stepping up to the plate. So I think I want to take, because you mentioned the Kareem Mafia, I want to take a step back from the trucking industry itself. And I really want to highlight this new culture that's happened. And a lot of people who are not from the tech industry, they don't understand the value of this new ecosystem that is formed. And they hear the headlines, or they read about some people. So just to clarify, in Pakistan, mafia is a negative term, but just to give some people who may not be aware of the origin of the term Kareem Mafia, it basically stems from a tongue-in-cheek label given to the PayPal mafia. So all the stellar sort of AAA quality founders from PayPal who went on to then found some of the most amazing companies in the world, whether it's Elon Musk, Tesla, SpaceX, to Reid Hoffman, LinkedIn, to Peter Thiel, to the YouTube founders. So 10, 12 of those core PayPal alumni went on to found the PayPal mafia, which actually literally single-handedly accounted for the majority of the largest companies in the tech sector. So similarly, when you say the Kareem alumni or the Kareem mafia, that's what people are referring to. And in this case, it's an extremely positive phenomenon because that's never really happened in Pakistan before. And although Kareem was based out of Dubai and it's a regional and global player, but a lot of the people belonging to the Kareem mafia were Pakistanis, whether they were like the founders of Truck It In or some of the other retail-based startups that we're seeing, Bazaar, Retailo, Dukaan. Several other Pakistani founders from the Kareem Mafia have raised funding over the last couple of years, are expanding fairly aggressively. Some other non-Pakistanis in the region, obviously, a couple of dozen companies now that have flourished from that Kareem alumni. The reason that this is really, really important is that this is the first time that this has happened in the Pakistani ecosystem, where a large company was acquired and then dozens or several hundred people from Kareem made money from stock options, which was never seen before in Pakistan. So people used to hear about Silicon Valley, people used to hear about other companies doing this abroad, but this phenomena had never really trickled down to Pakistan. And this was the first major event that happened here. And it's not just about the stock options, but what Kareem did was that it enabled people like Sarmad, Haider, Raza, the founders of Truck It In, and all the other startups from the Kareem Mafia to actually think big and to dream big and to actually be confident enough to think that they can actually pull off a Kareem 2.0. So all of these guys, the Bazaars, the Retailos, the Truck It Ins, and all of these people who've done some work at Kareem, their confidence level or their skill set is 10x or 20x what you would actually experience in any other domestic startup. And it's not just about the confidence or skill set, but it's also about the entire network that supports not just in terms of connectivity, but literally in terms of writing checks, right? So I think Sarmad, without naming the people, but we know that some of the senior management at Kareem actually bet on you and were one of the first few people who actually encouraged you to do this. So this is not something that Pakistanis are used to. So आमतौर पे ये होता है कि if you're working somewhere, senior management will make sure that you don't leave that company and actually get into a space which is overlapping with a lot of the stuff that Kareem does. And this is a hugely positive cultural change in Pakistan. When we talk about the Kareem Mafia or we talk about the Kareem Network, we're talking about people who are supported by senior management at Kareem, officially and unofficially, where people have written angel checks, where people have connected you to other investors in the region, where people have actually encouraged you to take the jump and actually resign from Kareem when the time was right, and to fly off and actually make the next Kareem, right? And this ecosystem is going to give rise to hopefully dozens of other, if not unicorns, some very, very healthy and commercially viable, profitable companies that would not have otherwise happened, right? So I think it's really important for us to recognize this new phenomena and to understand that this platform has been provided by this ecosystem, number one. And number two, coming to actually Truck It In itself, and that's something obviously that I've experienced firsthand, because as an investor, I've interacted with the founders and the entire team over the next almost year or so now. I think it's a really important blessing, like you said, that Heather was also at Kareem. Raza was also Kareem, ex Baikia co-founder. He was heading growth at Baikia before joining you guys as a co-founder. So it's really, really important and a huge blessing for a team to have experience of working together in a high pressure situation in a place like Kareem, in the region, and not just in Pakistan, where you guys have delivered tremendous metrics in teams that you were a part of. Islamabad was one of the best performing cities in Kareem across the world. You guys had a major role in that. And then moving on to Dubai, Saudi, the entire region, right? So I think that background is a tremendous help for most startups in Pakistan, where the founding team has actually that chemistry of having delivered earlier. So I think I just wanted to note the contribution of the Kareem Mafia and the Kareem network, not just in the three founders that truck it in, but the overall ecosystem and how that is attracting investment from the region. Any comment on that?
Exactly, Shehryar. So, one, indefinitely, it helped us evolve as an individual, and the kind of culture that we have seen or observed or we have lived for the last 5 odd years in Kareem. So it was massive, and this also adds to our vision or responsibility. So once we have started our startup right from the start, we made it clear like we will make sure like we provide all the colleagues with a similar or a better culture that we have seen in Kareem. And that culture was super sportive. Like if you are performing really well and if you are that kind of a personality who has that who has performed that massively well within Kareem and who you see has some startup DNA with him. So people around you, they will guide you in a better way. They will help you, they will motivate you to take that leap of faith. And not only helping you with taking the leap of faith, once you once you decide that, afterwards they will help you with bouncing back your idea. They will help you in terms of introducing you with a lot of shippers. They can help you with doing introduction with a lot of investors, and above all they can help you as you are a first time co-founder. They will help you in terms of getting things right. You will be well aware of the do's and don'ts, because within Kareem Mafia that got out of Kareem, so because of that Kareem Mafia, you had a lot of people who were 1 or 2 stages ahead of you. So those people helped you a lot in getting things done quickly. It saved a lot of our time, and we were the ones who were getting this information firsthand, and we were the ones who were saving a lot of time, who were learning a lot of things. We have never raised any money before. We have never ran our company in this way before within this sizable opportunity that we're going after in Pakistan. So these people around you, they give you a lot of confidence. These people give you a lot of support, and they literally get on a problem solving call with you where you think through a lot of your operational and commercial things, where they go with you in terms of solving a lot of infrastructure things, how your structure would look like going forward, what are the things that you should avoid even going in year 3, what are the things that will kick in year 2 if you not do it right now. So there were a lot of things around this which we got massive help from Kareem Mafia, and which we got massive help from people from Kareem. So this culture, this Kareem, definitely this the vision that Kareem leadership had in leapfrogging the region into the digital age. I think it's not only through Kareem Mafia, people are now serving that vision. They are not doing in Pakistan. The similar phenomena is happening across the region. Obviously, Pakistan is now taking a lead in a lot more different sense, where you see more number of startups coming out of Kareem. So this definitely is an add-on, and this is a massive change for the region, massive change for Pakistan, and the kind of talent that got evolved out of Kareem, that's a massive advantage for Pakistan. So now you can see a lot of fresh talent coming out of university producing better talent every passing year. So us or any other startup having access to that talent, obviously with us a bit more evolved and groomed. So if we can provide them a better direction, if we can provide them a better platform, if they can get in the similar kind of lab that we got opportunity at our early stage. So these people, or this young blood or youth, would definitely have a future ahead of them. So they will definitely make the best use out of it. So after 3-4 years, we will see a lot more responsibility, a lot more change happening within Pakistan, this disruption with a lot more young blood coming in. So I think this was a massive advantage for the overall ecosystem, not for only Trucketing.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point about providing, like I said, a Kareem 2.0 model, right? And now that people have seen that happen, and the proof is in the market. So all of these other startups coming in right now, they provide a channel to the next sort of wave of people who want to experience that and who want to get onto a rocket ship like Trucketing and like the others, and experience what it meant for you guys to grow so quickly, right? It's a sort of a repeat performance of what they saw at Kareem, and now they can experience it through startups like Trucketing. I think coming back to based on the Kareem platform, now coming back to the specific, I think trucking industry, I'm just going to be sharing questions in the middle of the conversation instead of piling them on all towards the end, because some of these are relevant to what we're discussing right now. So Junaid had a very relevant question, and that was something I was going to jump towards, which is primarily he's asking that why do you see most of the regional trucking players working on deploying marketplaces and no one is targeting other challenges in the freight business and its supply chain, automation, integration, etc.? I think a very valid question. And keeping this question as a background, I think the way we see the industry right now is in Pakistan, most of the people are going for the tip of the iceberg, which is primarily tier A and the MNCs and the structured business. But the really scary beast of the belly is all of that iceberg which is underwater, right? Which is the extremely fragmented, extremely unwieldy, hard to document, hard to formalize, informal cash-based society and industry across Pakistan, where you have regional players and you don't have one major giant across Pakistan, and you have to actually have partnerships, you have to have a network across Pakistan, and you have to juggle 10, 12 different moving parts to make sure that you can be a large player, right? That's the scary part, and that's the interesting part, which makes this sector so huge and so attractive for a lot of the players. And Junaid has a valid point, because on the one side, you have the regional players which were already, let's say, working in MENA and other regions, and they've raised millions of dollars, and now they want to get into Pakistan. And they want to get into Pakistan based on the muscle of their funding rounds or the muscle of throwing money at the problem, because they have a war chest, and that's how they've actually expanded geographically. And on the other side of the spectrum, you have a lot of local players that actually have a good hand on a tech platform, or even some tech companies teaming up with some local logistic players. And their angle of attack is that if we can make a technology platform and we can Uberize the trucking industry or the freight industry in Pakistan, and we can push technology adoption and enablement across the industry, we can actually create a platform like Uber or Kareem, obviously on the B2B side, and actually digitize this industry. And I feel, and obviously I've had extensive discussions with the team at Trucketing as well, we feel that it's a very, very localized, customized solution that will work at the end. Anyone that thinks that this is a technology play or a tech platform is going to solve this is going to be in for a rude surprise, in our opinion. And anybody that thinks that throwing money at the problem and subsidizing the pain point, or just subsidizing the equation of freight in Pakistan, that may work in the short term, but that's not going to be a long-term solution. And that may lead to some adoption in the beginning, obviously some market share, but that's not a sustainable solution because you can't just keep throwing money at the problem endlessly. So the problem is going to be solved with a very, very localized hybrid model, which is a very good understanding of the grassroots industry across Pakistan, a very good network among the stakeholders in trucking and freight in Pakistan, topped with a layer of technology which is easy to use, easy to adopt, and actually provides value add to people ranging from the uneducated truck driver to the fleet owners to the fleet managers to the end customer, which is an entire range from tier A MNCs to fragmented local SMEs. So it's a fairly hard problem to solve with multiple layers of complexity, and there's no silver bullet to solve this. There's no one size fits all, and you can't really take platforms or solutions that worked in other regions, even countries close by, and actually just deploy them in Pakistan and expect them to work. It's going to be a very, very localized solution for the local industry. So Sarmad, with that said, I'm going to bring you in for your take on how you see the digitization of the industry happening locally in Pakistan, and how you see especially the next 5 years, and the industry changing for Pakistan.
Yeah, so I'll just respond to Junaid's question as well. So in terms of why we pick this marketplace versus going for any fleet management solution instead of going for this Uber for trucking business. So first of all, whenever you are choosing some problems within supply chain, there are multiple layers of problem, and there are multiple problems. So you can't specialize, or you can't bring solution to all the problems at once. So you need to understand what is the biggest problem, what is the sizable problem or the sizable opportunity that we should go after. And obviously marketplace was one of them. And secondly, it's more about how suitable enough you are to actually bring solution to those problems in terms of your past experiences, in terms of your domain knowledge about the business. So all these things added up. So we were way more specialized in terms of bringing solution at a platform level, where we have done things in ride hailing, then we have done things in food delivery as well. In my last journey, I've done things for the last mile delivery platform as well. So a lot of these things added up. So obviously we have to choose a problem which is sizable enough, and we have to choose a problem which we can definitely solve at an initial level. As we go along the journey and we better increase our understanding about the supply chain, which we'll do as we progress, so then we will bring more specialized solution within that supply chain as well. But it's always about your focus, your abilities. Is this opportunity sizable enough or not? So because of these reasons, we went after this opportunity. So now coming back to Shehryar, how we are seeing digitization would happen. So the good thing is a lot of our truckers, so there are two sides of this marketplace. Both of them are super fragmented for that case. So if we talk about shippers, on shipper side, you have logistic managers, you have warehouse managers for this undocumented, for this unserved, for this super fragmented industry, which are tier Bs and below. And then you have tier As who have their whose warehouse managers and logistic manager are better skilled. So they're using technology for doing multiple activities. But if you look at this undocumented industry on the shipper side as well, these people are using Facebook, these people are using WhatsApp, these people are using TikTok. So they're using these social mediums for interacting with their family or friends for that case. So they're spending a lot of their time on these mediums. So in terms of us providing a creative, more engaging, interactive solution to them, obviously people would jump in. But definitely, as we have realized, trucking is a sales and ops heavy business at very initial stage. So it's more about you getting into that business, assisting people with that technology, that people can use at initial stage, and then obviously at a later stage they can use on their own. So it will take a lot of time in order to digitization to happen. But us at Kareem, we have done similar things within rickshaw market as well, where the social class were pretty much similar to this trucking space, in terms of the truckers or the driver that we're talking about. So looking at those things, we have brought creative solutions. We have incentivized those drivers to use these platforms. Then we have partnered with the right mobile companies who have provided them these mobile phones on installments as well. Then we have designed those trainings and onboarding sessions. We were quite interacting enough so that once they get out of this session, they're pretty much trained to use this technology and use it for their like trip as well. So for that case, obviously, it's an evolving process at a very initial stage. Understanding the space better, bringing the localized solution, bringing the tech on the current infrastructure that exists within the market so that people can communicate way more efficiently. For example, right now, if a shipper has to book a shipment, he has to go through a 5 layers of middlemen till he reaches out to the trucker. And a lot of this process happens on mental notes and phone calls. So making sure that you are now discovering a trucker or a price through a platform which takes few seconds, and then you are matching that trucker and shipper through that platform. That's obviously the first level of digitization that would happen. And for that, obviously, you need to bring a lot of creative solution to the system. There would be a lot of learning that we and a lot of things that we have implemented successfully in Kareem. So we will take those learnings. But apart from that, there are a lot of new things that we need to learn within this space. And there are a lot of things that we need to unlearn as far as we have learned those things were relevant to ride hailing food, which are not relevant here in trucking space. So this learning and unlearning process is going on. So we will be better understanding the kind of template that we need to use within this market to actually leapfrog Pakistan into digital space, and people would be using their phones and this platform as a mode to actually transport their goods efficiently, where we will unlock $1 billion in resource potential. So this is an evolving process, and we are like learning fast enough, and we are getting ourselves challenged enough so that we can bring those creative solutions to this industry.
I think very valid point about the various levels of technology adoption, whether you're talking about the drivers or the fleet managers, and how people are slowly, even people who are illiterate, they're now using smartphones for their personal WhatsApp and Facebook and for their own communications, and that's really helped with technology penetration. But like we were discussing earlier, this is definitely not just a technology play. It's a cultural play, and at the end of the day, it's about the value addition that any platform provides. So you can have the best technology platform out there, you can have the best technology marketplace, and it may seem like common sense that that platform is going to be the ideal magic wand for the trucking industry for matchmaking, and it'll save hundreds of millions of dollars, and it'll connect the truckers to the shippers. But at the end of the day, technology adoption and changing behavior is about cultural change. And there are different layers on how that will happen. If the drivers are not on board, if it doesn't make their life easier, if it doesn't put more money into their pocket, they will never really adopt this quickly. If the fleet manager's life is not improved, if there's no value add for fleet owners, if they're not getting more money in their pocket, no fancy shiny technology platform, even if you give them free smartphones, is going to be adopted until it genuinely solves a problem on the ground in their day-to-day grind of things. And once you start adding value or solving their pain points on a day-to-day basis, everything else takes care of itself. And the technology will also be a supporting platform. the economics and the commercials and the commissions and the payout structures will also start making sense. And then the other sort of ancillary supporting niches that Junaid alluded to in his question about integration, automation, whether it's satellite trackers, whether it's IoT, whether it's insurance, whether it's other supporting perks for people across the board in the value chain, all of those will then start growing automatically. So I think that's the ripple effect that will happen once you solve the core pain point of matchmaking between the truckers and the demand and the supply side.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's more about like becoming part of the traditional trucking community, so they become part of your tech community. Because at the end of the day, if you are bringing solution to what their problems are, if your tech has that stickiness, and it actually is solving or bringing value to the problems that those truckers or those shippers face in day-to-day life, obviously then they would become part of your tech community.
I think very timely question just popped up, and that is that, like you said, it's about adding value to those traditional truckers, right? And related to that, this question says that in Pakistan, most B2B legacy relationships and trust-based businesses are hard to crack. So how does a new platform like Truck It In aim to win the trust in a relationship-heavy market? And also I think related to your own sort of personal background and family background of that traditional legacy side. So you personally obviously have feet on in both boats. You understand brick and mortar, you understand traditional freight and transport because of your family, decades of experience, and you're the bridge between that world and obviously the modern world, and the 20x speed of Kareem, and achieving those things at breakneck speed. And that's what you're trying to bridge. But this is a very valid question, and I think it also points towards you and other teams having a unique advantage with these relationships on the ground. So any comments on that?
Yeah, I will say one thing. जब पहले दिन हैदर माड़ीपुर अड्डा पे गए, which is the biggest or largest freight terminal in Pakistan. So हैदर वहाँ पहुंचे और हैदर ने मुझे कॉल की कि यार सर, मैं यहाँ पे सारे वो लोग हैं जो तुम्हारे गांव के हैं, तो मुझे अपनी जुबान सिखाओ, मैं तो फौरन इन्हें क्रैक कर लूंगा. So just on a side note, so वैसे I think in terms of my family connections, or in terms of me belonging from an area from where people owns these infrastructural assets, who have that strategic importance or who are strongly embedded within this trucking ecosystem, representing the majority of these assets. So obviously it is an advantage, and obviously you coming out of that community from the childhood, where you have seen these problems, losses, shrinkages during the trips, where you have seen a lot of thefts happening on these, once these goods are being transported, a lot of accidents being happening, a lot of truckers who after these accidents, because of their medical condition, were unable to basically make their earning for the rest of their life, and there is nobody to support them. So there are a lot of things that you basically get an advantage in terms of understanding the real problems. This is more about, we understand their day-to-day life. It's not only about once they're driving, it's not only about once they're transporting your goods. It's more about, you understand their families as well. You understand the whole structure or the whole thought process behind someone becoming a trucker in Pakistan, or becoming a driver in Pakistan, or owning that asset in Pakistan. For us in our village, or in our close by villages, or from that belt, people actually have this logistic as a first choice of business for them. So coming out of that area or that belt, so it gives you a massive advantage in terms of understanding their problems well. And obviously on a second step, you get access to those people, so you get a lot of things done very quickly. So there would be a less friction, the friction that we faced within Pakistan in ride hailing, there were strikes from the taxi unions as well, which we brought on board later on. So here, right from the start, we have those community leaders onboarded with us. We have those community leaders serving our mandate because of the kind of trust and relationship that we have. And thirdly, whenever you reach out to a new shipper, people are working with a lot of suppliers or these transporters for the last 15, 20 odd years. They're not going to try you for only if you're providing them with a cheap quote or with the lowest rate. There are a lot more things to it. There is a trust, there is a relationship. So you can't unlock it with us having Kareem experience or us doing any startup or us understanding the market well. It's more about leveraging those connections. So once you reach out to any shipper, the shipper calls out like, who is your transporter? We say, we are a platform. So you don't have your trucker's background check. You don't have those. How can we trust you sending our $50,000 value of goods shipments, transporting to you a guy who is very ambitious, a guy who has done good things in tech, regional or locally as well. We know that it's inevitable that truck disruption is happening in Pakistan as well. It has happened in comparable market. By the way, people, these traditional businesses or people do understand this, but still they don't trust you. So for that to actually execute or realize within the market, you then leverage those connections, and then you say, okay, we have this supplier onboarded with us who has 30 years of reputation transporting goods with tier A's and B's and C's within this market. You name that person, they will say, oh, you're working with us. We say, yeah, we are onboarding our supply by leveraging these connections. And there are a few community leaders who are actually owning our onboarding channels right now. So doing those strategic partnership with those people. So again, like I think we are privileged in a lot of sense, not only from the point of view like where we got access to Kareem Mafia or we worked at Kareem Lab where we have successfully done a lot of things locally and regionally. It's more about I'm blessed where my family has worked within this ecosystem. So I belong from those people who can actually like pull off those chadars, and I belong from those people who can actually, I can speak the way they can speak. I can look the way they can look. I can, once I speak with them, they will feel like it's someone who understands our life, is someone who is actually solving our life. So bringing actually tech to that traditional system or the way you can win that trust or relationship, I think it's a massive add-on or advantage to our current mode of the way we are operating right now in the market. So yeah, we are again blessed enough. And whenever I count these blessings that we got and the kind of opportunity that we're going after, so I always feel way more responsibility. So yeah, and again, we are going after this opportunity at the right time. So I think now we're feeling way more responsibility. And whenever I talk about this trucking space and the passion and the things I get, it always makes me way more responsible. And we feel like it's not about cracking any commercial opportunity or growing at a fast pace. It's more about bringing solution to these problems. It's more about changing the lives of the trucker. It's more about changing the lives of how these shippers use to book goods.
Agreed. I think you covered that well, because primarily this industry is, or this cracking the freight and logistics industry in Pakistan is primarily a supply side issue. And it's not a demand side issue. Obviously, demand is a part of it. But whichever player is going to crack the supply side issue, that player is going to be the market leader or one of the market leaders. And that's why people till now have been afraid to jump in, or at least afraid to go underwater and mine the 90% of the submerged iceberg, because the tip of the iceberg is easy. That's the clean multinational top tier companies. That's a demand side issue. Anybody can form a sales team, pay them more money, pay them more commission, and get the demand going. But primarily the fragmented regional local supply side issue, that whole network is really hard to crack, and that obviously only comes with decades of experience, network, family connections. Like you said, more than family connections, it comes from a network of trust, where that supply side then aligns behind you guys. So I feel, obviously, because I've seen that up close in your case, I know that that's something that's like a super focus for you guys, and that's why you're seeing the kind of progress that you've seen. Stepping outside the trucking industry and the Kareem backdrop, I have several questions that I'm just going to combine myself because they're overlapping. A lot of people are asking about the starting phase of being an entrepreneur, or actually, which the thing that Pakistanis find really hard to do, which is resigning from their 9 to 5 jobs and actually taking that jump of doing your own thing, no matter how ambitious or how aggressive you may have been in your very fast moving careers. All three of you founders at Baikia, at Kareem, they were fairly dynamic organizations to work at, and fast paced organizations. But there are several questions about how do you make sure that you can make that jump. And also, I feel it's a good time for a lot of founders in Pakistan to actually think of doing their own startups because of the last 2 to 3 years. Not just the startup culture, but I think the massive increase in fundraising and funding options that we've seen, regional funds coming in, most of the rounds happening right now that are multi-million-dollar rounds, 70, 80, 90% of those rounds are actually covered by regional funds or regional angels, and not just local companies. So massive interest from the region in the Pakistan market. I feel like it's a really good time to start your new venture in Pakistan. But also coming back to that decision to actually make the jump, and what would you say to other founders who are thinking of making that transition, like you guys did?
Yeah. So obviously, it was a tough decision in a sense. We were ambitious enough to take this like leap of faith, but there are people around you who question you a lot once you are taking the decision. Because I had a baby girl once I started to like take this leap of faith at that time. So my family wasn't like, I was in UAE, my family was in Australia, and my parents are in Pakistan. So you're not living together, and there is obviously pandemic going on. So at that stage, people are finding sustainability, people are finding jobs where they can work for the next few years. So at that stage, obviously, you get challenged enough by your within your friend circle, by your parents, by your family, people who advise you, people whose advice you take seriously. But the good thing was, a lot of these people, once they tried to scare us, their objective wasn't that we shouldn't do this. Their objective was how well we are prepared to take this leap of faith. So we took this thing positively and we started making our preparations. So what are the things that we need to get it done in order to execute things in the market? So in order to serve our mandate in the market. So once we realized that, so we did obviously started doing our homework. We started becoming way more prepared. So that helped us once we actually took that leap of faith. And before taking the jump from the height, obviously, the second you take the jump, after that, it's all about like you then become more ambitious, you become more passionate. So then you obviously have like, now you have left everything. Now it's only about like you have to solve these problems, you have to create impact within this society. So then it goes to that point. So before that, the good thing was there were people around us who did it in a positive way, starting from our family, starting from our friends, starting from our like people that we have worked within Kareem. So we got better prepared. So that was a good thing for us once we actually resigned from Kareem. And then after that, I think things were like, alhamdulillah, we got way more than what we expected. We got backers or the strong portfolio of investors who have diverse background, who are really hands-on investors. So they are really helping us on this journey. So after that, like, we obviously had that template or the things that we need to done rightly before going on to raise investment. So we have done those things. So that's why, like, it was easier, and then we got way more than we expected, and we felt way more responsibility after that. So in terms of my advice, I guess a lot of people in Pakistan start right after the university. So I would rather say go for the startups if you have the DNA in you. If you want to do startup anytime in your career, it's never like late. You can still get those opportunity after a few years. Get that understanding. Get along the people from where you can learn a lot, where you can experiment a lot, where you can leave a massive dent. You get that understanding, or you can get access to pool of people from where you can build high performance team, from where you can bring on people on board who can problem solve for your startup. So get access to those people, learn how the startup is being done, learn how like, I think if you have seen more seasons throughout your life, you can obviously win way more variables in your favor, because within this startup the chances of success are very less. So in order to win all those odds, or in order to win those variables in your favor, so you definitely get prepared way more well. Get into that lab. And for anybody who is experienced enough, make sure it's not about raising capital. It's more about raising capital from the right people. It's more about you're building the high performance team around you. It's more about people who have similar passion as you as a co-founder have. So then go after the right opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was a very valid point, that people need to know the reason of why they're doing it, not just because it's a fad or everybody's doing startups. And I meet a lot of young, fresh graduates who've just come out of university, and it's like, we don't want to do a 9 to 5 because we want to be our own boss, and they don't realize that doing your own startup is actually doing a 9 to 5 a.m. and not a 9 to 5 p.m. a lot of times, right? So I think what it takes to go through that is generally underestimated by a lot of fresh founders. But I think I would also like to, maybe that's a shameless plug to promote you guys and your hiring, because I know you're expanding your team fairly aggressively. But I think I genuinely feel that a lot of people who may be listening right now, or who are interested in or thinking of doing their own startups and are looking at different spaces to get into, and don't have a specific space that they're more passionate about, or more skilled towards. I feel that exactly like Sarmad and Heather and Raza went through that grind at Kareem, at Baikia, and they basically were a part of high performance teams in large companies, but which felt like small startups because they were nimble and agile, and they had to achieve a lot really, really fast. I think that sort of a lab, or an experimental environment teaches a lot, which is invaluable and which is not available in a typical sort of slow moving multinational company. And all three of them have said this to me as well, and I've seen other cases as well, where I'm 99% sure that if Sarmad and Heather and Raza had joined a bank or a typical MNC and a slow moving large organization, they definitely would not have jumped ship to do this, and they would have been comfortable in their roles, and maybe even they wouldn't have the skill to actually pull this off. So I think just my personal suggestion would be that do check out the jobs page at Truck It In. If it's not Truck It In, there are 10 other startups right now, similar DNA, similar, whether it's Kareem Mafia or otherwise, that are hiring. And I would highly recommend that people actually thinking of doing their own thing jump onto a well-funded or a fast-growing startup or company, and actually learn from people like these, and spend a couple of years at a place like Truck It In, and understand what it takes to scale something at that pace, and scale something in a market which hasn't been tapped before. And once you get that invaluable experience, then you will most probably be forming, the Kareem 3.0 wave coming in a few years' time. But these sort of startups and companies were not there in Pakistan earlier. So Kareem setting the pace, Airlift, all of the other retail-based companies, Baikia, some of the fintechs, all of these are growing at a pace and getting funding at a pace that was not seen before in Pakistan. So I would highly recommend considering joining companies like Truck It in whichever sector you're attracted towards, and gaining that experience before trying out something on your own. So I think we've covered most of what we intended to in terms of the trucking industry, how that's changing, what you guys are doing, how you guys are positioned in this very fast moving yet traditional industry that is now going to see massive change over the next, I would say, 5 to 10 years. Um, any closing comments that you have in terms of other people getting into startups or people getting into similar legacy industries that are now being digitized, and what you would suggest, how they go about their plans?
So I think you pretty much covered it. And in terms of people going after these traditional market opportunities within Pakistan, so build the right team, build the team in terms of the co-founder who are complementing enough, and then obviously expand your team in a way where you have again those complementing skill sets, and where you have people who can challenge your opinions, where you have people who can bring a different, a better perspective to the story. So bring on board those people. And I think it's more about for any fresh graduates, for early starters, get on this ship, get on with the right people, so that you can actually experiment a lot of things. Make sure that your passion, your energy, you're making the best use out of it. So yeah, so we're waiting for these ambitious people to actually reach out to us. We will actually reach out to you as well. So we're looking out for this talent. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us on LinkedIn. So we are generally very like proactive in responding, and we are looking out for people like you.
Great. I think that's a great note to end on. I'll just quickly recap. I think, although we've had this discussion multiple times offline, but I think this was a great summary, and I hope this was useful for the people who were listening. Daftarkhwan, as usual, puts the recording up online on their social media channels, YouTube, etc., and then they do a wonderful job creating small, more consumable snippets out of these. So topical, smaller videos will also be shared down the road. Um, I think my only last comment would be, and I'm not just saying this as a VC or as an investor, but because we touched upon this multiple times, a lot of times founders are not lucky enough to have co-founders like Sarmad, Haider, Raza, having worked in a company before, having the experience of actually delivered things together and having that chemistry. And there is no hard and fast rule in solo founders not actually succeeding. But I think the biggest difference that I'm seeing in the market right now is people who, as Sarmad said, not just can create a team of relevant co-founders who believe in the same vision, but also who have the capability of actually building a team around themselves. And that's the main difference that I'm seeing in terms of the startups that are really succeeding well, or that are raising good rounds of funding and that are growing fast, and the other startups who may have products that sound really interesting, that may have products that are technically very, very respectable, but they're not really getting the traction in the market, or they're not really growing because they don't have the skill set of creating a team around their mission. And that's something, again, to complement Sarmad in terms of he's constantly selling the vision whenever he's sort of hiring other people, whether it's pitching to investors, pitching to partners, pitching to future employees. I think whenever you speak with their team, you feel that they genuinely believe in this, and it's not just a sales pitch, and it's not just some dialogue that they've memorized just to make a sales pitch. So I think that would be my last comment. There is tons of money in the market available. There are tons of angels coming in. There are loads of new VCs coming in. The right team with the right product will not find it hard right now in Pakistan to raise funding, but it's more about the chemistry of the founders and the problem, the genuine problem that you're trying to solve. It's a huge enough market for a lot of the top startups, a lot of the top companies and VCs around the world to pay attention to Pakistan. I think we're at the right place at the right time. Millions of people with thousands of problems waiting to be solved. And I think other teams like Sarmad, Raza, Haider, Truck It In, Kareem Mafia, new startups coming in. I think it's a tremendously interesting time to actually start your own thing and jump into the arena and try and figure out how to grow your startup. So those were my 2 cents. Thank you so much, Sarmad, for your time. Pleasure as always talking to you. People can reach out to you guys through LinkedIn or truckitin.com, as you mentioned. I represent Deosai Ventures, which is deosai.vc. I think our social media handles have been shared by Daftarkhwan, who I'd like to thank once again for hosting us as usual and for building a community and giving us this platform to discuss things which are super exciting for us and which were not really discussed very frequently in Pakistan till a couple of years back. So it's great to see these discussions on record now. And thank you so much once again, everyone who saw this live during Ramadan. I'll sign off now. Khuda Hafiz.
Thanks a lot.